Hello, folks. Welcome to the Wrecking Crew. I'm Vito D'Amico,
I'm Mark Arts.
and we are brought to you by Majestic Garage.
The experts at Majestic Garage want to help you take your unsightly, messy garage and turn it into an organized, neat space you and your family can be proud of.
Well done, Mark.
Thank you.
Mark.
I've been working on my studio announcer voice.
Hey, do your. Can you do that in that Morgan Freeman voice?
Well, that depends. Am I getting paid for this shit or not? Because I'm a big money man.
You ain't getting paid fuck all, but that's pretty good.
Thank you. Did you happen to know that the word veto in my country means the president can tell you to fuck off? Wow.
Well, we're bringing the bling into bling, folks. We got a wonderful show for you today. Very very funny man, Mr. Mark Christian Walker, all the way from Nova Scotia. Very talented.
Mark Walker.
Mark Walker, not Mark Arts. Mark Walker will be here shortly. He'll give us a call, and I guess he's got the Nubian show tonight in Toronto, which is kind of weird because when he said Nubian show, I was thinking like Nubian, like he's doing a black show. Can I say that?
Maybe he is. I don't know. I don't know what that means.
I don't know. It's just weird when he said that to me. I'm like, oh, okay, you're doing it, but I'm pretty sure Mark's white. So I thought the Nubian show was just in. Well,
when he calls, we'll ask him.
Yeah, all right. So he'll give us a call in about 10 minutes, and what happened? Oh yeah, folks, this week too. For this month, I know we gave away the Leaf tickets, which a lot of people were
disappointed and angry.
Yeah. Well, you know, whatever. The guy, Jason DeBattista, won them from Brampton, Ontario. He's going to go see them. I talked to him for a little bit. He's going to take his daughters. So
nice.
That should be really cool.
That's good.
Yeah, that's cool. Like, I'm like, take me, but whatever.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't go.
No, you can't.
So, did you see on Facebook the little kid, they brought out the little disabled kid for the third star?
No.
Yeah. I literally thought it was one of the players, but it was a little kid they brought out, which I thought, hey, that was really, talk about fucking kissing ass.
Put some skates on him.
Yeah, we'd probably have a good chance of fucking making the playoffs.
It's the worst that could happen.
But that was a cool move. That kind of, it was one of those things where...
It tugs at the heartstrings. It's nice. It is.
So I just thought, that's cool. They brought out the little kid. But why don't you guys work on fucking hockey?
They could maybe focus on that.
Yeah, they could focus on the hockey and not focusing on fucking...
It's going to be, I think, a building decade.
No, we'll never see a cup. This fucking city, you won't see shit. That's the sad, that's
you gotta tear it down for 40 years before you can build it back up again.
I don't know what it is. It's got to be something with... What freaks me out is, how come you're a good player, you come from another city, you all of a sudden you put on that uniform...
Toronto is a vortex
and
of
you
talent.
suck shit. I think the Paranormal Activity...
really?
There's something going on
It's like the Bermuda Triangle for talent.
Yes, you lose your talent. You're still there.
Yeah.
But your talent left.
It's a mystery.
If you're a GM, your brains have fucking left too.
Yeah.
For some reason, no matter what you do in Toronto, it just never works out for you.
Yeah.
You have the days of Doug Gilmore, which that was
so close.
Yeah, and, you had an amazing guy. You had Clark, Potvin was awesome. You had a team that, I don't know, they just gelled perfectly together.
They did.
Then now, I don't know, it's just so long ago.
I think Gilmore had 80% to do with that. He did have good guys with him, but he was the heart and soul guy.
He really was. He was.
Wendell Clark too. He was great too.
You ever see the interview I did with him?
With Wendell Clark?
Yeah.
No.
I have a guy, the guy who helped out with the sound. He probably doesn't want his name, but Adam Defoe, that fucking
it's out there.
Greasy little monkey. He's a really good guy. He came out, he helped out with the sound and everything, and he did an interview years ago. I got him in London at the Canadian Comedy Awards.
Oh, really?
And I told him in 90, what was it, 93? This is how long ago.
93, 94 was when they were kicking ass.
Right. Well, remember when they were playing Detroit?
Vaguely.
Okay, there was a playoff game. And it's the famous one where he goes behind the net.
Okay.
Okay, and he goes around and around, and Bob Cole,
That's right.
It's one of those goals. What happened was, we're all at a bar, and there was this girl there that on and off dating, and we weren't dating at the time, but she comes up during the game, and I'm just pouring sweat. All of us are all like, oh,
yeah.
And she comes up and she goes, "If Toronto wins, you could do me in the parking lot."
Wow.
Yeah.
Parking lot.
And I was never so like, you better fucking win.
You were the biggest Toronto fan on the planet.
Oh, I was like, man, you better, because I was horny.
Now, when she says parking lot, is that like a colloquial phrase for a part of her body, or like right outside the bar?
Right outside the bar.
Okay.
I got to do her.
Or just to clarify.
Yeah. So, and I was telling him, and he's like, oh no, he's just got that look on his face, and I'm like, Dougie, thank you. And I hugged him, and he was awesome. He was like, and I was like, that was one of the best lays I've had, because it was like, when you're all like, I don't know.
Daddy's all pent.
Yeah, and I was just so, it was like a victory lay.
That's awesome.
Where you're just like, dun 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 dun. Oh, it was fantastic. Oh, sorry,
there's our guest.
Sorry. Let's see if that's Mark Walker. Mark. Hold on.
Oh, hello.
Can you hear me now?
Professionalism. That's what we're all about.
Yeah, I can hear you now. How am I coming in?
Looks good.
Is he coming in?
I think so.
Hey, give it up for Mark Christian Walker, everybody.
Wow, that's a round of applause.
All the way from Nova Scotia, originally from Nova Scotia, educated
via Toronto.
Yeah, via Toronto, educated by Stone Cold University, class of 316.
Someone's been to my Facebook page.
Sorry. But he's played festivals all through Canada, United States. He's played in Africa, the UK, the Edinburgh Festival. Very, very funny man. And he's doing the Nubian show in Toronto tonight. That's Kenny Robinson's room. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Christian Walker.
Yeah, I'm doing the Nubian show in about 7.5 hours, but who's obsessing?
Yeah, well, it threw me off when you said the Nubian show. I remember talking to Mark Trinidad about that, and he's like, yeah, I'm doing the Nubian show, and a few other guys. All the people I've talked to were all black, and this is a while ago. And then you're like, oh, I'm doing the Nubian show, and I just thought, shit, that'd be a rough crowd.
I believe, historically, I was the first person of Caucasian persuasion to break that barrier.
No shit.
Oh, wow, look at that, folks.
Sort of a reverse Obama.
It was. Yeah, I felt like comedy's Buddy Holly.
Oh man, this is fucking brings a tear to my eye. You didn't sit in the back. You drove the bus. Wow. This is amazing.
I just didn't want to wreck the bus. That's all I was concerned about. This was back when Yuck Yucks was at Yonge and Eglinton.
Right.
Which, as I understand now, I have not played it since it's relocated to Richmond and Duncan in 2002. So it's been a while since I've done it.
Right.
Kenny and I go way back to when I met him when I was an amateur back in Halifax, and Kenny. People were lined up down outside the club and literally outside the building and around the corner.
Oh, I know.
The old Yuck Yucks in Halifax to see him when he was. I think at that point he was billing himself as the raging bull of comedy.
Oh God, was he ever? I mean,
and it was January 1987. It was a winter in Halifax, and people were lined up out the street to see him.
Holy shit!
And we've been friends for a long time, and I would play his jam room. He had this amazing room called the Groundhog Pub, which was like this pit. Like you went downstairs. It was rated Sherborne and Bloor, and it was like when the opening scene of Rambo 3 when he would go down to stick fight. It was that kind of crowd.
Right.
And so I'd play that room in the mid to late 90s, and Kenny had gotten the Nubian show going now. It's like 20 plus years running. And after a year and some change, Kenny just kind of looked at me one day and he said, "Mr. Mark Walker, you're going to be the one that's going to break the color barrier of my Nubian show." And
that's
so
fantastic.
Immediately panic set in.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd be totally. That is a tough tough crowd to. I mean, be the only white guy. That's like you're playing the Apollo.
It really was intimidating. And as soon as he said it, I thought of nothing else until I played it.
Yeah, right.
And I was, I had some good material, but that would work for the crowd. But I was just I was a nervous wreck. It went well. It went very well.
Which amazes me because you're one of the coolest guys. Like before a show, I think I worked with you in Windsor and in London and in Barrie, and you were always just. You'd be in the green room just telling stories. Like, I'd be pacing back and forth.
The first laugh was like, be a bitch.
And you were just so. I mean, Mark, I'm not trying to kiss your ass, but you crack me up. I mean, you're one of the guys that not you, Arts Walker.
Sorry.
One of the guys where all the comics will sit in the back and just watch you, and just you're constantly learning off of this guy.
Vito hasn't got his pants on.
I tell those stories and I do all that stuff in the back just to control the internal panic.
So. You're amazing at it because you really, I mean, you're one of the guys and that most comics. I mean, you go and do a show with people, you constantly. If they go up, whoever I'm working with, I'm like, I'll go out for smoke or do something, but. If you're on, you don't want to miss anything because it's never really the same. You've always got some wonderful. There's always something about you that I don't know what it's like. Where you want to. It's like the uncle everyone loves that they want to listen to the stories, and you tell these wonderful stories that people just want to listen to, and I mean, I remember in Windsor, you blew the roof off. The night, like literally, it was just constant. So it's just, of course, Kenny Robinson would ask you because he would want somebody that is damn funny, not funny, but damn funny. So
well, I remember, I miss the Windsor room. I know Josh Haddon has the Quarry there now, and I would like to get in there and play that. But Josh is, been going through a lot of medical problems,
right.
And literally fighting for his life. So,
right.
So he's got a lot on his plate, but at some point, he actually asked me if I'd play the Quarry, and I was like, absolutely, and then I couldn't seem to get a hold of him again, and I was like, geez, what's going on? I thought he asked me, and then I realized, started reading all the posts of all of his health issues and stuff, but I think he's doing really well, so if anybody out there listening, send some positive vibes to Josh Haddon's way.
For sure.
But I always loved that Windsor room. Like even
it was a great room.
Was that the one that was above the Honest Lawyer?
Yeah. That was the
in
one.
The basement of the Ramada.
Well, I played both with you actually.
Yeah. Both were fun.
They were. It was good. And now Windsor's dead.
Well, I mean, isn't what happened was Detroit got their own casino? Isn't that what happened?
I think so. And then, but I mean, how many people? I mean, for the population of Windsor, they should have a comedy club.
Yeah. Well, they should, but maybe they gave up on laughter a while ago.
Yeah, well...
the Detroit gloominess rubbed off on them from across the river.
I remember playing down there, and half the comics were down there because the women were beautiful. I mean, after they would be lined up at the bars, it'd be fucking gorgeous.
We're talking about Windsor here, right?
Windsor, that's what freaked me out. I was like, where are these beautiful...
Well, there's more strip clubs in Windsor than I think anywhere else I've ever seen.
So we're seeing a bunch of strippers.
I don't know well, there are attractive women, but I mean, I remember there was one club called Cheetahs, like not cheaters, but Cheetahs, like the animal.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just walking up Boulette Street, on a Saturday afternoon. It was like about, I think it was about early fall or late fall, so I had a long coat on. And I'm walking along, and all of a sudden this van comes screaming to a halt, and it's all done up like a cheetah, and it's got cheetahs written on it. The door opens, and I'm about maybe late 30s then, and the door opens, and there's this stunning 21-year-old looking at me going, jumps out, he just kind of leans out and says, hey, you want to go to a fun place to have a party? And I looked at her and said, wait, this is all wrong. You're supposed to be on the sidewalk. I'm supposed to be in the van.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I
remember
Sin City.
You're one of I worked with you in Hamilton once, and you made a heckler cry.
Nice.
Like, he literally got up.
A guy?
It was a guy. It was this drunken guy, and Walker was just the guy. Of course, the guy was, he had a couple of drinks, but he looked like a fucking idiot. Mark made him just cry. Like the guy just got up and said "fuck off," and he just ran out of the room.
That's a milestone.
Yeah, that was great.
That's
awesome. It was one of those times where you just go, oh yeah. Like I don't know why people, for some reason, and that's the thing that pisses me off is I don't know what makes you think you could take on a professional comic on a stage when this is what they do for a living.
Well, it's like nobody jumps on stage of a Stones concert with a guitar and says, "Hey, Keith, I got this."
Yes, exactly. But that's something where it just annoys me about stand-up, that people, for some reason, I were just at a show a couple nights ago, and some woman, she thought she was all bent out of shape because she thought that was her job, was to heckle.
Yeah,
that's what you're supposed to do, right?
Oh,
I'm helping you, Mark. I'm helping you, right?
Sambuca Julie.
Yeah.
I've had people say, well, one time I was hosting and somebody just started up at me, and I don't really go after the crowd, or I'm not an insult type comic, and I don't provoke anything. But at one point, this person just burst out of nothing, and I just looked at him. I go, "Well, who are you supposed to be?" And the guy literally goes, "I'm the heckler." Like he filled out a job application.
Yeah.
And he goes, "I won the part of heckler tonight," or whatever. Like he thought it was an essential part of the show.
And for me, people pay a lot of money to see a stand-up show, and they go there, and they just, for me, they fuck up the show. It's like, just shut up. Like it's funny for about 2 minutes, but if they don't shut up, and I think the huge problem is, I think the doormen are not taught, or the manager is not taught to go over and well, they do at Yucks, but there's a few places you've been to. They've sent you out on corporate gigs. And
what's that?
They've sent you out on corporate gigs, or you need to go.
Oh, yeah.
And for a fact you can't go at it with some drunken fool that works at Ford, and you're told to Mark, this is a corporate. Don't really go after people. Blah blah blah. So you got to sit there and take it from some jackass.
Well, and then they get to go and brag to their buddies around the water cooler. Well, you should have seen me at the show. I was so funny.
Yeah.
That happens, But there's other times where there's very organic interactions. Like I've had someone just blurt out something and they didn't mean to, and they were embarrassed, but it was funny.
Right.
And sometimes things like that are just a lot of fun, and you've got to, hopefully when you get a little seasoning under, with you and you get a little more experience, you sort of know which moments to just sort of laugh and go along with it, and which, times to go, just shut someone down. Because I've heard people say something like just very organic and by accident get a laugh, and I've seen the comic get angry and just go after the person.
Yes, and I think that's wrong.
And then the audience gets mad at them. I go, well, that guy was just being, it wasn't that mean. I don't think that was called for. So you really have to, it's a very slippery slope. You really got to have your radar up.
Exactly, yeah. And I think a lot of the young comics, they growing up and watching the older guys, I'd watch Donnie Coy, or I'd watch you, or I'd watch anybody, and I would watch how they would handle themselves on stage. And there's a few tricks you could learn. There's there's the standard, how to get a heckler back. But when you watch professionals, they've done it so many times. It's not a generic thing. You're actually assessing the situation. Like if it's a room full of, I mean, the one that I hated the worst was the second show, Saturday night bachelor party. Where she shows up and she's got a drink of a dildo on her table, and her friends are already fucked out of their minds, and they sit up right up front and they think they are the show.
Yeah.
And you got to be careful, because if you know how it is, if you go too hard at it, the whole crowd will turn on you.
Well, I find with the stagette parties, like even when it's the gals, most times it's 50-50. Now, if it's a bachelor party, it's more like 80-20. It's going to be obnoxious.
Right.
I've seen some very polite, well-behaved, lovely young women all come out, and sometimes, and even even the goofier ones can still they sort of get their fill.
But you know what I noticed?
And then we move on.
But what I noticed with you never See, when you get up on stage, for some reason, there is this element of people already respect you. For some, they just sit there and go, "This guy's in a suit. He looks confident. I'm not going to mess with this guy. He's going to make me look stupid." And there's something where even, I mean, people, you have that ability. Now, there's people like me who go on stage, and some people go, "I'd love to fight him," So, I want to have an argument. I want to, and you're very. Some guys just have that aura about them that can just.
My buddy Pete Anthony, also from Nova Scotia, from Pictou, he's got this. It's like he just brings out the crazy in people.
Yes.
And appetite. He's not looking for trouble. Like, he is just trying to do his material.
Right.
And I will see him. Of course, he tackles some pretty intense stuff like religion and social commentary and stuff like that. So you're opening the door to that. But I've never seen people just kind of go off on him.
Right.
And it's just I don't know if it's a look about him, but because Pete's very confident on stage, and he's he's very articulate, and he's and he's a tall guy too, and I don't know what it is. And like one time we're at a show, and he made some offhanded remark about Easter being a fairy tale, and some guy right to the left of him just jumps up and goes, "But on the third day he rose," and whatever.
Yeah. Wow.
And then I went up after him and did some religious jokes. I looked right at the guy. He just sat in his chair, and I looked at him and go, "Yeah, it's you, Pete. It's like,
yeah, yeah.
You got some fragrance you mowed."
No, I think I think it's just the way you are, Mark, is just they already know you're going to say something brilliant, so they really don't want to mess with you. So they don't want to look stupid. And I guess if you have a couple more drinks. But I've seen you so many times that most guys just really don't want to have anything. They most of the time people are there to have a great time and laugh their asses off. And of course the religion part of it. I mean, you know how some people are with the religious part of it. I mean, I've seen one comic say pretty much the same thing that you were saying, and they just go absolutely ape shit. Where a woman just starts yelling out, "You heathen! You heathen!"
There's parts of the States where they'll literally take you aside and they say, "Don't bring up Jesus or we'll kill you because we're Christians."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's pretty nuts. I mean, Mark Arts was telling me.
Yeah. The Phil Robertson has gone bananas again. The Duck Dynasty freak show. He's come up with a scenario. It was $100 a plate prayer breakfast that he was speaking at. And he started going on about atheism, saying that basically you have no moral compass if you're an atheist. So he comes up with this fucking crazy psychotic scenario in his brain that he's like, so say two atheists or an atheist family and two guys break into your house, tie up your daughter or tie you up and rape your daughter and your wife in front of you and then cut your dick off and show it to you. But you wouldn't know that was bad morally because you're an atheist. So I guess you think that kind of shit's okay. That's basically his argument in a nutshell.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
The guy is fucked.
And he's on TV, Mark, and we're sitting there going...
Well, that makes me very, very glad that I've never partaken of Duck Dynasty.
Well, yeah, no shit.
But didn't
he get into one of those guys got into a thing about God literally hating homosexuals or something?
Yeah, God hates
same guy.
God hates fags. If you're gay, he said something about of course, a guy and a girl can do it, but what did two guys get out of it?
Well,
how does that work? And it's like, easy, Phil. He fucks a guy in the ass, the other guy enjoys it. They both enjoy it. That's how it works.
Yeah, don't dig any deeper.
You're talking about a guy who hangs out in the swamp. Like, tell me you're not gay.
Who's paying $100 a plate to listen to this fucking whack job?
Once you're on TV these days, once you're on TV, like I can't stand. Mark, I don't know if you, Mark Walker, I don't know if you believe in the psychics on TV, like that Caputo, where she says she's talking to your dead relative, and see, I don't believe that, and I think that's wrong to do stuff like that. But she's famous, and she's making a shitload of money off of it.
Well, everybody's, she could maybe reach my dad and go, "Where'd you stash the dough?"
Exactly. Like, why is it, for me, she was like, she had the guy crying, she had the whole audience crying, she's saying, "Your father just wants to let you know that he loves you And I'm going, I could have, for $39.95, I could have told you that, pal.
Well,
Like,
it's like you said earlier.
Tell me where Dad stashed the money. Where were the dirty books that I loved that he, you know, I mean, there's. Oh,
he ruined those.
Yeah, well, there's got to be something. Anyways, I just thought that would. Anyways, I just wanted.
I got into it with a very someone who was a very religious person or claimed to be religious one time, and they were talking about how they couldn't stand homosexuality because at one point I was going through a bit where it's like, you know, I said, you know, gay is not a cult. You know, it's like you never had gay people knocking on your door at 7 a.m. with literature, you know, that whole deal. And so he was quoting the Bible and this and that, and I said, well, it wound up being a bit.
Right.
And I turned the tables on him. I said, okay, so you love the Bible? He goes, yes. And I said, well, let me put this towards you. I said, you know, God creates Adam out of thin air once he creates the earth. He goes, yeah, that's right. Adam's lonely. He needs company. All of a sudden, he takes one of Adam's ribs, even though before he created Adam out of thin air, now he needs a rib.
Right. Now he needs,
and then created Eve.
Right.
And he goes, right, we have. And I said, and men and women have pretty much been driving each other crazy from this point on.
Right.
And the guy goes, yeah, pretty much. I said, well, maybe homosexuality is Adam's way of saying he wants his bone back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, now that's good.
Yeah.
I love it.
And, I thought the guy's head was going to explode.
Well, of course. It's like the same old thing where, I mean, what got me, and this guy totally made sense, I remember him he was talking, and he was doing this debate, and he goes, so, Jesus is God, right? And the guy said, yeah. And he said, okay, so God sacrificed himself to himself, you know, for us to praise him.
Yeah.
Like, that's what freaked me, you know, and I'm thinking, man, he's
Well,
right.
He needs that. He needs somebody to tell him how great he is.
It's like, here, I'm going to come down and I'm going to sacrifice myself to myself.
That makes perfect sense.
And that makes perfect sense, you know. So, anyways, folks, this show is brought to you by Majestic Garage. We are the Wrecking Crew, and this week we're giving away, well, not this week, this month we're giving away a steady rack. If you check us out on Facebook, or you go to majestic.ca and
majesticgarage.ca,
yep. And Facebook, let us know our guest's name and where he's from. You can be at the end of the month, you'll be drawn to win a $120 steady rack. Sorry, it's not Leaf tickets, but it's a steady rack, and if you go on the website, I'll put up the pic. You'll see it, and you go, holy shit, this is pretty neat.
The bike is the thing you fucking trip over the most in the garage.
Yeah, but this thing, you got to see this thing. It's amazing. Hey, what would be your dream car? I saw a pic of you, Mark, with a car behind you. I think it was like an old Corolla. What would be your...
No, it's a 1988 Honda Prelude Special Edition. It's the last car my father bought. Mark speak English good much. It's the last car my father purchased. My dad enjoyed his cars very much. And through the 70s and 60s when, gas was going for a song, it was, big GMs. He loved big hulking GM cars like Pontiac Le Manses, a couple of Chevy Impalas, which were just
those
boats,
are big ones.
just boats with wheels. My favorite car he ever had was the '74 Chevy Impala, just 354 barrel monster.
Sweet.
Wow. That was a big ass car.
Love that car. But that was the last car he bought, and it still runs. And so I just got a picture taken on that. I have. It's when you're talking about a dream car, like you consider okay, I'm 51 years old, so. There were a lot of amazing cars that impacted me over the years. Of course, Adam West's original Batmobile.
Yeah, you could buy that. If you ever get a chance, go to Dude, I Want That, and you could buy the new Batmobile or the old Batmobile, and they go for something like fucking $150,000.
So they're like production cars.
So I don't know, some guy builds these things. I don't know. If you go to Dude, I Want That, they'll have anything it's really, really cool. But if you want the old Bat car, you can get it. It's just you got to pay a shitload for it.
Yeah, there's the old Batmobile was a real sweet one. I'd say it's a three-way tie with Tom Selleck's GT308 from the Magnum days, and
That's
Burt
my
Reynolds'
dream car.
77 Trans Am from Smokey and the Bandit.
Yes.
Love that.
We were talking, right? Remember
We're talking about Jackie Gleason.
Jackie Gleason, one of my
Yeah.
favorite. Yep. Oh, fuck, he was amazing. When I get home, I'm going to punch your mama right in the mouth, boy.
Yeah, there's a movie you couldn't have made, eh?
No,
No.
I mean, these days with the drinking and driving, and you can't. You can't. Remember, I mean, we're talking about Bill Cosby, and I don't know where you're at with that, but the Bill Cosby thing. Remember Revenge of the Nerds? The guys were breaking in at night. Was it trying to put? No, he faked. He put on a mask, and he ended up banging the cheerleader chick.
That's a no-no.
And and everybody cheered. And now, if you were to show that, people would be all like, "That's crazy! He raped that girl. He raped her."
Rape.
So that it's just totally changed. You know, I mean.
The world certainly has changed. I mean, look how long, and I think Cosby career-wise. I guess he suffered from being around long enough where it finally came out.
Do you believe that happened?
There were lots of rumblings about him not being a very nice man. I didn't know to this level.
Yeah, I mean, when it was like one or maybe it got to about 3 or 4, I thought, no, it can't be. But God, when you're up to 25, I'm thinking, man, something's not right here,
Yeah, that's a numbers game that's hard to ignore for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
I remember in the '90s when Geraldo Rivera had his daytime talk show, and there was a woman there. He had the woman on the show, and she was claiming that Bill Cosby fathered her child.
Oh, I remember that.
And I remember Geraldo Rivera just bullying the living daylights out of this woman.
And you know why?
For the entire episode.
Because he's buddies
just wouldn't let her have her speak.
Yeah. He's buddies with that. A lot of people. I mean, look at Whoopi Goldberg, totally defend Bill Cosby, just saying, I mean, like, tell me these girls didn't want it or something like that. Like, give me a break. Yes, that's what I wanted. I wanted this Jello-eating pudding fuck to drug me and fuck me. Sure.
Pudding fuck.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
That was my stripper name back in the 80s.
Pudding fuck.
Pudding fuck.
Yeah.
Hey, so I was talking to you. Sorry for jumping the topics here. If there's anything you want to talk about, let me know. But I wanted your take on the Letterman retirement. What do you think how that's gonna work there, Mark? Do you think it's a big?
For someone my age, it is the last link to Carson and the last link of how a talk show used to be.
Right.
Although I do like Jimmy Kimmel. I mean, Jimmy Kimmel's got a very great sense of history as to who's gone on before him, and the fact that Jimmy Kimmel is hip enough to give Don Rickles an hour to himself every now and again.
Right.
And let you know where Jimmy's coming from. But I mean, Jimmy's a newer era that acknowledges and admires the older era. Dave is the last link to that era.
But do you think it was? I mean, when I was growing up, I mean, comics, that's all they talked about was to get on Carson. If you got on Carson, every comic, God, when I was growing up, that was their big break came.
Yeah, get called over to the
You
couch
got called
after.
over to the couch. Jerry, there was that famous Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah, Drew Carey was the last guy that was made.
Yeah, and when he tells a story, I notice all these guys get emotional because it's like, you know what it was, Mark? It was like winning the fucking lottery. You made it. You're gonna get a call from an agent. People are gonna give you work now, like serious work. Back then, I think there were only 12 channels for the longest time. So, and Carson was the only guy at night that was doing this. There were a lot of guys that were trying to compete, but would lose miserably going up against him. And Carson was the king of late night TV.
Well, he was so big that his show was called Carson and not The Tonight Show.
Right, yes.
Or they always said, you got Carson, or you watched Carson last night, or would you see Johnny?
Oh,
in comics, we'd be saying, yeah, I got Johnny, I got Carson. It wasn't The Tonight Show,
Yeah, and I don't know if you remember, but for me, it was a big deal to see who was on Carson.
Yeah.
You know? It wasn't, you couldn't get like the YouTube stuff. We couldn't tape it. There was, what was on. So if I wanted to see Buddy Hackett or I wanted to see, I loved Jonathan Winters. And whenever I would see him on the show, I would just I just
You never get tired of those.
you
guys.
never get tired of him. You just thought this guy is just magical,
You
and
make
it was there was something magical about the show.
You make a good point about the name brand thing, because Letterman even jumped networks, and it was still a Letterman show. It wasn't late night.
Yeah,
or
it's
anything like
Dave.
that.
Oh,
Yeah.
but he makes something like $50 million a year or something, does he not?
Yeah.
He started. I remember he signed for about 15, which was big money back then.
Right.
Johnny, they had a book out. Henry Bushkin, his lawyer, who was always referred to as Bombastic Bushkin back in the Carson days on television. Henry started getting Johnny about $25 million a year since about '83 or '84.
Wow.
Holy
Like
shit.
that early enough, and it ended up with Johnny the last 5 years, I think, stacking about $30 million a year.
Holy shit, man.
They signed a long-term deal that took Johnny to the 25th, and then after that it was just year to year. Like at some point in the spring, Johnny would look at like late winter, early spring. Johnny would just kind of look over at Ed and say, "Feel like doing another year?" Yeah, and then he'd sign for another year.
Right. And of course, Ed would be like, "Well, what the fuck else am I going to do?"
I'd figure a way to come back from the dead and work if that was the case.
I think he literally, a lot of these guys, like you see like Craig Fergus, who says, I'm done. He didn't get, like, a lot of these guys, they have like a 4 or 5 year run. I don't think it's fun.
Well, it's you surrender your life to that. I mean, you think you just show up an hour before the show, throw on the suit, and start having fun. No, there's a lot of work that goes into that.
There's a shitload of work. And
I heard Dave's at that theater at 8 a.m. every day.
Yeah, and
goes home late, because there's the post-mortem afterwards. Like they analyze the show,
Sure, he's got to
Dave
go
was
upstairs.
very hands-off and free. You live for that show.
And do you remember he had the little room upstairs where he was supposed to be fucking broads or something?
He had that one intern going there for a while.
Yeah, he had a pretty good setup, but I could see why he'd want that. I mean, if I had a show like that, it'd be like, I want a room where I could just fuck people in.
Right.
Well, he was that Dave, huh? I remember when that scandal broke up, but again, you got to really admire Dave for just grabbing the reins and going, yeah, the guy was trying to extort me for this, and
that was cool.
He got behind
this is what I did. Did you ever see that actual episode?
That was cool. I saw the one where, remember when he went at it with O'Reilly?
Yeah.
Oh, that was great. Like, I just thought, here's a guy that, and they say this about Letterman, he purposely has his chair higher. Like, he's a tall dude. But
yeah, Dave's 6'2" at least, I think.
Yeah, so he'll purposely have his chair higher than his guest, and it just, for some reason, the guest, they cower. They just whatever this guy says, they laugh at because they don't want to make him angry.
Like that scene in Nutty Professor when he sits in the dean's office there and he sinks into the chair further and further and further down.
Yeah. Do you remember when that famous guy, his name, I forget the actor's name, but he was the father off of Back to the Future?
Oh, yeah, Christopher. Crispin Glover.
Yeah,
Fuck, you got a great memory, Mark.
When he went to, I'm strong, Dave.
Yes.
And he went to, he put his foot like just an inch from Letterman's nose.
Yeah, those crazy
and
platform
Letterman
shoes on.
kicked him off the show. Said,
let's have a commercial.
Yeah, let's go to commercial. Get this guy out of here. Yeah, and they got rid of him. I mean, so.
Well, yeah, I remember Letterman just walking away, going, "Okay, I gotta go look at the top 10 list here," and then.
Like he just, hey, that to me, that was power, man. you don't like somebody, get him off.
I didn't see Crispin Glover for a real long time.
No one.
After
I don't think
that.
anybody has seen. The guy's kind of weird. He has like a.
He had him back in '89. He actually had him back on late night around '89.
Yeah, I remember that because he told me, says, you nearly took my face off, and that wasn't really cool. That was like, remember when Bobcat burnt the fucking, when Leno was so pissed off? Remember when Leno was pissed off because Bobcat Goldberg, who was it that burnt the fucking...
It's Bobcat Goldberg.
Yeah, he set the couch on fire, and Leno was like, why are you doing that? Why...
Well, did you ever hear Bobcat's joke about it?
No.
He did it just for laughs, and he talked about setting the couch on, or setting the chair on fire, and all this, and he actually made Jay Leno say "fuck," and so he was all pleased about it.
Nice.
He goes, and the punchline was, he goes, "Hey, I thought I was doing Jay a favor because that's the first time you heard 'on fire' in the Tonight Show since Johnny left."
Oh. yeah, that's right. I remember that. Yeah. He's crap. He told a bit. He was playing some university, And oh man, they booed him so hard. The horse they brought out, and I guess they put the horse was covered up, and he's supposed to run through this big sign of the university of this horse. So this horse runs, and it's supposed to run in the middle of the field. Where this horse, of course, was blindfolded, couldn't see shit. They took the blindfold off him. The horse runs right through the paper, but runs right into the fucking stands and rams itself and knocks itself out. And Bobcats, he goes up there and he goes, geez, it tells you what kind of a winning team you got when your fucking horse wants to commit suicide. And they booed him right off like they just hate.
That's a great bit, though.
Yeah, it is. It is a fantastic bit.
You just gotta.
Yeah.
Now, I know that you are a big fight guy. You love the old boxing, right?
Old school, yeah. This Mayweather-Pacquiao thing is the first time I've been interested in a fight, in a boxing match in a long time.
Me too.
I couldn't make the transition into UFC. To me, everybody's just rolling around on the floor in shorts, and it's like one kiss away from being a different pay-per-view.
Yes, but for me, what I don't like about UFC, and the argument could probably be same thing with boxing. With UFC, I remember seeing. I mean, the guy puts a guy in a headlock. The guy gets knocked out. Great, and for me, it was like it's just two tough guys fighting, and half the time he's gonna win, and half the time I'm gonna win. The
champs don't hang on to it.
Yeah,
the champ's not always the champ.
What's his name? The Canadian,
St. Pierre.
No, what's his name? What's the guy?
George
St. Pierre.
Yeah.
Yep.
He held on to the title for a long time. Great, and that's super. But all the other guys, I would just sit there and go, I don't know. It just seems like two tough guys. First of all, I don't want to fight anybody with no shoes.
Yeah.
I want you wear your fucking shoes. I don't want to roll like the whole grappling thing. When I was in school, and if two guys ended up on the floor, you'd say stop, and everybody would get up, and then you continue fighting. So there was none of this grappling, grabbing each other. I don't know. So for me, I was never into it, and I love when two guys beat the shit out of each other.
So what about Pacquiao and Mayweather has got you interested again?
It's just like Mayweather's got the undefeated record now, and he's going after Pacquiao, but Mayweather's very tactile, and he thinks he's got Pacquiao past his prime, but I don't think he's got Pacquiao that far past his prime.
Yeah.
And I think Pacquiao still has enough to do it.
See, but I don't know. What I've seen, Pacquiao to me is a fantastic, one of the best fighters I've seen in a very long time. But some about Mayweather, and I would love to see him lose, but I really think Mayweather's going to win this.
Well, he's just his skill level is amazing, but he is older, and he's not as active as a lot of the guys back, like the Sugar Ray Leonard's fought several times a year.
Right.
Like, even if it was a super fight, they'd followed up, a couple months later with just a stay sharp fight, or 3 months later. Like, they fought at least 3-4 times a year just to stay sharp.
So who are you picking?
I think on a purely skill level, it would be Mayweather. The heart and just that old what if factor can go with Pacquiao, because Pacquiao's got the punch. Right. Mayweather's got the skills, but Pacquiao's got the punch. But the puncher can always do it in one punch. I mean, George Foreman won a title at 45 because he tagged him.
Do you remember that? I remember seeing that fight. Me and Catherine were watching it. Catherine gets suckered into watching these fights, and she totally. It's one of those things that she totally. She could give two shits, but once the storyline, I explained the storyline that he's an older guy, and I made her watch when he went up against Foreman. When he went up against Ali in Zaire, and no one ever felt bad for Foreman, when he lost, because but if you look at Foreman in that fight when he got knocked out and him being brought back to the back, the look on Foreman's face, and people are booing him, and
he was just a mess for a long time after that.
He looked like there's this thing in saying, hey, that's great, Muhammad Ali won, but you kind of felt bad for Foreman. He should have killed him. He should have beat him handily, and that look of just shock on his face Like, what
Yeah.
just happened? That, you know. So I explained that to her, and she's like, "Oh, okay." And then we're watching the fight, and who was it? The young guy he knocked. He actually fucking clocked him nicely. When he finally won the title back at 44.
Michael Moore.
Yeah, Michael Moore, and I thought Michael Moore was going to be amazing, and see what was great about that fight. If you watch, the fight was awesome because the way Foreman was fighting him was kind of like, I'm slow, I'm an old man. I'm slow, I'm an old man. I'm slow, I'm an old man. And then he fucking just clobbered him, you know.
Yeah.
And he just suckered Moore into it. And Moore, after the fight, even said, I got to go back to school to go learn how to fight because this was clearly I went to school today.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And even Foreman said, he goes, Ali fooled me, I fooled him.
Right, exactly. And my wife was crying. I got a little teary-eyed, too, because I just thought, that was so nice to see him, you know, all those years. He could have been, if it was me, I'm bitter right now. You could imagine if I was, I'd be bitter, on the verge of fucking suicide every other day. You know, I would just be angry at the world, and he totally turned it around. And he became, my wife couldn't understand the old George Foreman to the new George Foreman. She just couldn't make out. And I said, no, this guy was mean. Like, do you ever watch when this guy was training, how he'd hit the bag with bad intention? I mean, you remember when he took on, when he and I love Smokin' Joe. He beat what'd he do, knock him down 7 fucking times?
And the thing that always disturbed me about that was Joe got up 7 times.
Yeah, was, yes, exactly. But Joe was an amazing boxer, and he got crushed. You remember when he went at it with Norton, and Norton was considered one of the toughest hitters out there, and he got the shit knocked out of him. So it was back then it was so. It was so different. It was like the big fight's coming up. It's coming up in like 4 months. And you would just sit there, and it was like this big thing. Now it's like, who gives a shit?
Well, now there's been a white heavyweight champion for how many years, and nobody gives a damn.
Right.
And back in the 80s, it was all the great white hype. Look at the Larry Holmes, Jerry Cooney thing. That was all about the great white hope and this and that.
Remember Cooney, whenever he'd get hit, like it was that old joke, he got hit and fucking blood would just squirt all over the place.
He leaked like a word.
He leaked all over the place. He was like a fucking... there was always that white hope. Tommy Morrison, who just passed away a couple of years ago from, he thought, hey, I'll go screw some hookers without condoms. Because he thought only gay people get AIDS. So
I remember when George fought Tommy actually for a WBO title that Tommy retained.
Right.
Back before Tommy had all his health problems. But there was another time where actually, I remember when George knocked out Jerry Cooney.
Yes, I remember that. Remember it was called.
And he went on Dave. He went on Dave Letterman, and with the mouse under his eye and everything, because Cooney really did tag him at one point. Like, and even George said, he goes, "I thought I was in real trouble there. Jerry hits hard." And Dave, being Dave, was so brilliant because he talks about the whole fight and everything. And then George went on the very next night. And Dave looks at the Foreman. He goes, well, George, here's the thing. I can beat Jerry Cooney. And then it gets the big laugh, right? And then George looks at him. He goes, well, Dave, I'm good friends with Jerry, and I'll just go tell him you said that.
Yeah. No, I know. I just wish it was like, it's that old. You can never bring back the good old days. But to me, it was just a different time. It was the sweet science. I get it. Okay. What I loved about boxing was that you could go up against a guy, and you could always have just that one. There's always that one chance of you could knock him out if you tag him properly. Okay.
Well, look at Mike Weaver that time with John Tate back in like 79, 80.
Yeah.
John Tate was that big kid from Knoxville, Tennessee. He had he was about 6'4", 6'5". Really skilled kid. He won the title in South Africa, and he won the WBA title that was vacated by Ali. And he was in the ring with Weaver, and Weaver was about 6 foot and, very well built. But, Tate was just boxing the guy's ears off. 45 seconds to go. Weaver lands this left hook, and we got a new champ.
Yes,
Yeah, it's
yes.
crazy.
And that
was a 15-round fight.
And that was 15 rounds. Yes, exactly. I mean, these fucking guys used to go, I remember it was like 100 rounds, or if you ever watch the old black and whites, you'd be stunned at how these guys would fight, just they were palookas back then.
What fight I could not believe when I watched it was when Douglas beat Tyson. I've never been more shocked in my life.
One of my favorite fights was seeing that, because for me, if you turned it off, if you turned the volume off, if you ever get a chance, watch the Douglas and Tyson fight. If you turn the volume off, Douglas kicks the shit out of him.
Yeah.
No, he had his number right from the get-go.
Oh man, it was, and it just showed you how, that night I think he fucked about 4 Japanese women or Chinese women, Tyson.
Yeah.
So he was up all night, porking away, and he went up against a guy whose mother just passed away a month earlier. So this guy was he was serious. He wasn't there to waste time, and he beat the shit out of him, and just shows you how tough Tyson was. Well, he took a shit kicking.
And when you look at Tyson's early fights, he coming into the ring with the ripped up sweatshirt on, like no robe, no nothing, just a vicious machine. And I thought to myself, there is no way this guy is ever gonna lose unless he wants to.
He's doing the old school. For me, Tyson was the Kenny Liston of his time. He would intimidate you. He'd scare the shit out of you.
But he'd also beat the shit out of you.
Yeah, well, same with Liston. If they talked to a few guys that trained, Angelo Dundee, and there were a few guys that remember Liston, and they say, who was the toughest guy you've ever seen in the ring? Just tough. And they all said Sonny Liston.
Yeah.
That man was a monster. And see, when he went up against Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay back then, when he went up against Cassius, he told, the corner was telling Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, dude, you're bigger than him. See, you're taller, you're bigger than him. Sonny would show up with like 15 frickin' bath towels around his neck. He looked like a bear.
Yeah.
So he would completely intimidate you. And there was that famous Michael Spinks when he went up against Tyson, that 93 seconds or something. And what happened was Spinks was throwing up before the fight, going to the ring. He was terrified of Tyson.
Just fear. Yeah.
So if you are already terrified of somebody, you're fucked. There's no way you're gonna win if you are absolutely terrified. And that's what Tyson instilled. He terrified guys. And if you watched when he went up against Holyfield wasn't. He wasn't being bullied.
No, he wasn't
right?
scared.
And that was an amazing fight. I love that. I mean, I just thought, hey man, that wasn't where you could sit and watch two guys fight. To me, like that was very enjoyable. It was like the old days. It reminded me of remember when Thomas Hearns, one of my favorite fights, when Thomas Hearns took on Marvis Hagler. That was fantastic. That to me was fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that was, and I always, Sugar Ray Leonard was doing the color commentary on that for HBO, and he said, well, what we had here was two of the highest skilled, gifted boxers in the business today, and they took all that skill and threw it out the window.
Yes, exactly. That was great, and that's the truth. That was wonderful. That was one of those moments that you just sat there as a kid and just thought, oh man, like this is what real life, what it comes down to.
To be fair, you know what, you do get that in UFC at times too, and then to me it's worth watching because you get a couple guys that genuinely just don't like each other. They it's like you said that they train and they flop around on the mats, and then they get into this cage and they forget all that shit and just start beating the fucking crap out of each other. It's great to watch.
It was, but
it's rare.
Yeah, but
it is great to watch.
But I don't know anymore that if it's an actual hatred. I can't, like, I've seen too many guys try and hype it up. I mean, going right off topic, the NHL, if you ever get a chance, watch Marty McSorley and Probert get into a fight. And I think it was a 2-minute fight. And by the end of the fight, and this gets Don Cherry all teary-eyed. They both hug each other.
Right.
Because they knew that it was just a job. This is what they have to do. There's no real hatred. It's just, hey man, I gotta fight this guy.
Yeah.
Okay. So I respect that more than two guys pretending to hate each other.
I think a lot of times they do genuinely dislike each other, and it may be that
I think they hate, the tattoo or something. Like the other guy's got a bigger tattoo or fucking.
It may be something that's planted in their brains by their handlers or who knows, whatever.
I don't like that they go from 7 fights and all of a sudden, hey, you're going up. Like to me, Dana White just seems very greasy.
He does seem a little.
A guy that you could say whatever you want about. What's his name? Cornelius there with the hair. Don King. But at least Don King will sit there and go, I made you $5 million, and and Dana White's like, hey, for fight of the night, you just beat the shit out of each other. You get $5,000. So for me, I don't know. I don't, and the whole he's trying to get girls to fight, and I see he's trying to get good-looking chicks fighting, and it does nothing for me.
No, that doesn't do anything for me either.
Like Mark, I'm sitting there. I was at a show and I'm watching it.
Why don't go to dance clubs?
Well, the two girls are looking and they're trying to look mean. You have these two good-looking girls looking at each other like a stare down, and the whole time I'm thinking, please make out, just make out.
Well,
just make out. That would totally do it for me.
What's wrong with that?
A good long clinch to start and see where it goes.
Yeah, some lube.
Yeah.
What?
Folks, this show is brought to you by Majestic Garage. We are the Wrecking Crew, and we're talking to the very talented Mark Christian Walker. Tonight, he'll be playing the Nubian show in Toronto. That's Kenny Robinson's room. If you get a chance, go down and see him. There's plenty of time. Mark, where else are you playing?
I think I'm kicking around Ajax at some point soon. I'm actually going to be in Niagara Falls next week.
Oh, cool. So, folks, if you get a chance, believe me, go see Mark.
Google
him. Let him know. He'll. I
I'll
guarantee
be playing
you,
a casino at
if
Easter weekend, where everyone will be looking for their own personal miracle.
Nice.
Yeah. So any. And we're the Wrecking Crew, and we want to ask. Do you have any stories? You always had great stories you would tell us about, road stories, or I remember some of the things you would say were.
Well, there's when you were talking about heckling, and how sometimes sometimes it's done with bad intent, and other times just organic moments happen. One of my favorite things I ever saw. This didn't happen to me personally, but one of the things I ever saw was there's this great comic Brian Hart from back in the late '80s, early '90s, and he went on to an amazing writing career. He wrote for Mad Television in its heyday when it was like beating out Saturday Night Live. All kinds of amazing Kids in the Hall. He wrote for them when they were in their heyday. So brilliant writer and performer, and he was very engaging with an audience. Like he sort of just stalked the stage like this panther, and he would just fly into topic after topic after topic, and he didn't do segues or anything like that. He was very raw and just very, very into the moment. And this was right around the time where the crowded, it was the Uptown Club in at Yonge and Eglinton, and there was about, it was packed. It was a Saturday night crowd.
Right.
Headlining, and this was right around the time those two kids killed themselves to that Judas Priest album.
Oh,
and the band Judas Priest was taking a lot of flack for it. And Brian just kind of flew into this thing where he goes, I really feel sorry for Judas Priest. And then he went to continue, and you just hear a woman in the front row kind of mumble something. She just goes, like this. And Brian was always a person that would just engage a heckler. Like, he wouldn't do a standard stock line, like, keep your mouth open, I'll be right over, or whatever. He would just talk to them. And he would go, he'd go, I'm sorry, what was that? And she goes, like this. And he goes, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be smart or sarcastic. I really can't hear what you're saying. What are you saying? And then at this point, the whole crowd, it's a sold-out crowd,
right.
Like 250 people are just, you can hear a pin drop. And you just hear the woman go, rabbis. And he looks at her and he goes, rabbis? And she goes, they're not Jewish priests, they're rabbis.
Oh, man.
Oh, thanks for the input.
And the place erupts, and Brian literally falls on the floor laughing.
That's awesome.
And it was 5 minutes of everyone laughing their head off and no one saying a damn thing.
Oh, that's great.
Like, Brian couldn't catch his breath, and when he finally caught his breath, he goes, "I can't be angry at her. She's trying to help."
Yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that was probably one of my favorite, sort of on stage, sort of organic moments. And there's a lot of those, to be had.
Sure, I wish somebody would do a show of just the guys in the green room, just before a show, after a show, going to the show, whatever, just the guys. I think that, to me, I always found that funnier. I always thought it was a funnier, deal.
Well, sadly, we don't see as much of that as we used to. People just kind of do their shows and head out now, especially younger comics. Like in Toronto, they'll do a set at the downtown, and there's a couple of different jam rooms they want to hit. And granted, they have the opportunity to do that, so they get to work on their act. But there just doesn't seem to be as much people hanging out, just swapping stories like, "Oh, geez, I went to this gig, expect this," or "I went to that gig, expect that." But, times change.
Right.
And, that's all well and good. But, yeah, there was, I mean, one thing that really drove the point home about, a true comic to me is when Seinfeld put out the movie Comedian.
Right.
And so he's okay, the Seinfeld show is done, and what are you going to do? You're going to rebuild this whole act. You're going to start over again. This is a guy who's probably a billionaire by now.
Right.
And so he wants to start over, and when he goes anywhere, when he's in New York, it's all people who've had like one or two successful TV shows out of the club doing spots for free.
Right.
And especially when he went to L.A. to work on some stuff, and he goes in the green room, and everybody in that green room had one minimum long-running successful TV show that's made them rich for life.
Right.
Some had two. I mean, you had Bob Saget in there with his notebook. You got Gary Shandling was in there. You had, that's just love of the craft. And then again, it ends with him doing his set, talking to Leno, and Leno's still talking about how he's afraid he's going to be a garbage man in Boston someday.
Right.
And how he hadn't spent all his Tonight Show money, and he never spent any of his Tonight Show money. He just lived off of his touring money.
Right.
And Seinfeld's laughing at him. He goes, "You still think you're going to be the garbage man in Boston, Jay? It's not going to happen."
That's so cool. I mean, that's where, Saget is one of the, I think one of the most easiest guys. People razz on him. I used to razz on him until I saw him, just perform, and just the way, and he's one of the nice, like, he's just a nice guy. I never saw ego with that guy. I don't know. It just seemed like a very genuine person, and he just, he's like.
But he had one of the raunchiest acts.
Yes.
Going, and the thing is, he always had that.
He always had that. Yeah.
He always had this raunchy act, and but he had that great, sitcom dad kind of face.
How did they keep that buried for the whole time he was doing that show? How did that never surface?
It wasn't like today where, I mean, you heard about that wrestler that got in trouble or something because everybody's got a fucking camera on their phone.
Yeah.
I mean, if you heard about some of the stuff that people were, I mean, it's like if Walker were to do a joke and you only caught, somebody taped just a bit of that joke. And I'm not talking about when the one guy did the rant about the, Richardson
Kramer
went nuts. Of course, that was completely nuts. But just say we caught a little bit of Walker's act, and I made it that the crowd was into it. They know the backstory to this story. But if I were to put that on the web and put something like he hates Jews, and you'd never got the whole act, you would totally sit there and go, that Mark Walker, man, he hates Jews.
Yeah, everything spreads so fast.
So these days, it's so tough. I mean, you could find out back then. I think what destroyed the wrestling business was back then there was a reason why these guys never talked to you. It was like the mafia. They wanted to make sure to keep a distance and protect the industry. And then you have idiots coming out and going, yeah, it's written, I read lines, blah blah blah, and it's all fake. So you could check it out on the net. This is what this guy said. How can you have control over anybody these days? You have a phone, you have Facebook, you have YouTube. You could do whatever you want. I have no control over you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like walking the streets and seeing a phone booth, and my daughter goes, "What is that?" And I go, "Sweetie, we had to use that. If I needed to get a hold of somebody, that's a phone booth."
Well, I mean, the whole Michael Richards thing, I mean, if that wasn't documented and put out for everyone to see him actually saying what he was saying with the tone he was saying it.
Right.
If that had happened in the 70s, it might have gotten a paragraph in the National Enquirer and forgotten about.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. And that, I wish that happened to the guy.
It's the same. It's the same with the cops too. Now, I mean, I don't get how they still don't get that people are going to know and see what they're fucking doing. Did you see I was watching Fox News this morning, and I think it was in Detroit. They pulled this guy out of his car, pulled him over, and just beat the living shit out of him. And to his credit, he drove to a place where he knew it was nice and bright. There was lots of lights on the street, and
right.
the dash cam caught everything. They threw. His story is they threw a little bag of coke inside this guy's car.
Right.
Yeah.
They pull him out, beat the fucking crap. Like, this guy is punching him in his head.
Was he white or black?
He was black, and they just beat the shit out of this guy, blood everywhere, and it's all on film. It's all caught.
You see, for me, when I was a kid, it was a different time. I grew up 70s, early 80s. It was a different time. The cop, for me, was always, if you got lost, you run to a police officer. You'd always say, "Sir."
Oh, fuck that.
You would never disrespect a police officer back then. And I just think they're hiring too many morons. They're not hiring, like, I get, like, I have a fireman buddy his name's Andy. He's 6'4", and he's about 250 pounds of muscle. Yeah. Now, that's who I want. If my house is on fire, my kid's in there, and I can't get there, that's who I want coming through the door. I don't want, I'm sorry, a 5'2" girl weighing 130 pounds, affirmative action bullshit. I want a strong dude.
And I'm obviously not saying that all cops are like that, because I don't want to get arrested. But, and like, I got lots of friends that are cops. My son is actually in school to be a cop. But, man, use your fucking head.
I think they're hiring, Mark, what do you think? I think they're just hiring just the wrong people.
Well, you the wrong people get in, and all that. You get wrong teachers. And sadly, those are the ones that get the press.
Right.
You never hear about the firefighter or the police officer in general that actually recovers the car. I mean, who actually saves the day, who actually helps someone, just a little thing like getting a frightened little girl back to her parents.
Now, do you think it's like society's way of we just love to, like, it's that old thing where you see a celebrity falling, you think this is the best. I think that's just a horrible way of just that's just, to me, I don't get it. I don't get why.
Put it in Nicole Smith. That poor girl was walking around for 2 years not speaking fluent English.
Right.
Or coherent English. And everyone just laughed and took their shots at her, and then we couldn't believe she died.
Yes. No,
Maybe
I know.
Somebody could have stepped in and helped that poor girl.
Yeah. Hey, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, and she was so beautiful,
By all accounts, I hear she was a very sweet girl.
Well, of course she was, but it's the same.
Like everyone else, but a very nice girl.
But it's the same thing with that China girl. She went from being a star, pretty much. She was in sitcoms. She was on Third Rock from the Sun a few times. The wrestler. And then, how I always do. Remember, I love doing my daily look for new porn. She's on there, and there's like 6 guys fucking her in a ring. I'm thinking, is this the same girl?
Yeah.
What?
Well, poor old, I think her real name was Joni or Lawler.
Yeah, Joni Lawler.
She just was a victim of circumstance to the absolute max, because she was doing her job and doing it well, and had a huge following, and she got the rug yanked because her ex-boyfriend, Hunter Hearst Helmsley or Paul Levesque, married the boss's daughter, Stephanie McMahon, and she got run out. She did nothing wrong. I mean, she was actually at the height of her popularity when she got the boot.
Yeah, but you don't need to go to porn.
Well, you sometimes you don't deal with things well.
But you don't need a dick in the mouth and one in the ass, and I mean, you should
speak for yourself, Mister. I
mean, yeah, really.
Hey, do you think Hunter Hearst Helmsley is like the Kevin Federline of wrestling?
Oh no, that's a talented guy.
So do you think he really likes? I think he really loves Stephanie McMahon.
Oh, she's a girl you could definitely fall for. I mean,
she's beautiful.
And she's very funny. That's to me, that's always the big thing. You know, if you're funny as a woman, that's a big thing. And she was very funny whenever she did any sketches or any.
She was very
any
talented.
Storylines in the in the WWE, she was very good at it. Like she could do the tantrum princess very well.
Yes.
She could be very funny. That's a big one. And and then on a totally superficial, totally superficial basis, she's built like a horny 14-year-old boy drawer.
Yeah. She is beautiful though.
She's I could see anybody going for her.
She's a natural fit in that business.
Oh, but you know what it is? I think her dad. Her dad. I mean, I've heard stories and where he is literally in an interview. In the middle of the interview, he's shit himself in front of people, and JR talked about this, and he didn't even blink an eye, and everyone knew, and he could care less. I mean, here's a man who at that time was worth $1 billion, and he in the middle of the ring when Stone Cold grabbed him out in the middle of the ring.
Yeah.
And he's worth almost $1 billion at that time. He pissed himself, literally, like it wasn't fake. To show that he was scared of him.
Really?
Yeah, you're talking a billionaire doing that, taking bumps, and I mean, you could tell. So his daughter, I think Stephanie sees her father as, hey, he's my hero. I want to do the best that I can. And the faces she makes when she plays. Now she plays, the evil boss. She makes those faces that sell, whereas my kids weren't really into, my daughter Vanessa's like, wrestling's stupid. And then she watches, I was watching the pay-per-view of the WrestleMania, and she's sitting there watching it with me going, who's that? And I go, that's Stephanie McMahon. Oh, okay. And she just sat there, and as a kid, that's what drew me into it. When I would see Lou Albano lose it, or you'd always go, who are these guys? Yeah. And you wanted more. You wanted to see more.
They were good at keeping everything a mystery too.
Well, I think they're incredibly talented. You have to either be, if you're a wrestler these days, you got to be an actor. You've got to be physically fit most of the time, and you gotta have a good sense of how to remember your lines or what there's a lot that goes into being a wrestler these days.
Well, I think there always was. I mean, like whether you looked it or not, you always had to be in shape. Like you had to pull that amount of time. I mean, I remember going to see just the regional wrestling in my hometown in Nova Scotia, and they would fill the arena. And these guys would have to put on like a 30-minute match, and that's you had to time it. You had to it's a lot of skill goes into that, and they're very underappreciated. They always were, but I mean, these were some of the greatest entertainers you've ever seen.
Oh yeah,
Muhammad Ali wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Gorgeous George.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Because Ali was just little 18-year-old Cassius Clay in a Louisville radio station going to Rome. And he's going, well, sir, I hope I do well and I win the gold medal for my country. And then Gorgeous George goes, if this man beats me, I will crawl across the ring, kiss his feet, look up at him and say, you're the greatest, and take the next plane out of the country. And Ali's jaw was just on the floor.
Yes.
And then they went to the break, and apparently Gorgeous George lights up the smoke after his set.
Yeah.
And looks at Ali and he goes, always talk big, kid. Half the people come to see you win, half the people come to see you lose, but they'll fill that arena.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where he remembers being at a show and they brought Gorgeous George out, and just the remember Gorgeous George, his whole bit was, you remember, he kind of played on the homophobic bit. And,
it was the whole phone. But he had his women were valets.
Yeah, and
he had women valets. They'd spray him with the perfume.
The perfume. And the referee would touch, to make sure he didn't have any foreign objects, and he'd scream out, "Get your dirty, filthy hands off of me!"
Bugs Bunny did the same thing, if you remember, against the Crusher.
Yeah, and he was Gorgeous George. The guy before he was wrestling was Gorgeous George.
Ravishing Rano.
Oh yeah, so so to me that was what wrestling misses today, is having a. I think it's too written. There's. Yeah, like if you ask the old guys like a Snuka or even a Stone Cold or any of those guys, nobody came up to them and said, "Here, can you read this on the air?" It just came from. It was so simple. Like, hey, you're fighting this guy. This is what you need to say. The Texas Tornado was supposedly the worst. He had the look, the physique, but he couldn't. It was like, now remember, you're fighting Maple Leaf Gardens, and he'd go, "Okay, tonight in Louisville." No. Let's try it again. Maple Leaf Gardens. Okay, tonight I'm fighting the Butcher. No, you're not fighting the Butcher. You're fighting. Yeah, so it was just.
There's a reason a lot of those guys never did interviews like
I heard one story of when I was a kid. One of my favorites was Adonis. Do you remember Adonis?
Adrian Adonis.
Yeah. And what's his name tells a great story about how he. Before a match, like he'd get into a hotel room and he was in a motel, and he would hide his dope. He had coke and he would hide it in the ceiling. He held it in the ceiling of the hotel in his room, and he forgot where he put it, and he ripped out the fucking ceiling. And Paul Orndorff tells the story of how he ripped the fucking ceiling apart in his room to find this dope. Because he couldn't wrestle without it, Yeah. So it was like these crazy stories of these guys.
Well, wasn't one of the things that sort of lifted the veil on wrestling was when I think it was actually in Newfoundland, and wasn't it Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Nikolai Volkov were busted in the same car for possession?
That was because that was a big no-no in the business.
And it was
and they were the big deadly rivals, and they were riding together.
Yeah, they were playing up the Cold War thing and taking full advantage of the USA-Russia deal.
Remember when Bret Hart was fighting Owen, and they were always told you were never to at the airport, or you never go together. And what happened was Bret Hart was at the airport. Owen was at the airport too, and Owen winked at his brother and gave him the nod. And all of a sudden, this woman yells out, "I knew it! I knew you two liked each other. I knew it!"
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, the good old. All right, give us one more if you can, Mark. Give us one more story if you can think of any road story or anything you want to. I don't give a shit. Whatever you want to do. We're naked.
Are you naked, by the way?
Oh gosh, what am I? I would actually, if I could, I'd like to take the opportunity to pay tribute to one of the comics who was like my comedy father, was Gary David. I'm sure you saw him, Vito.
Yes.
Gary was from a different era of time. There was back before there were comedy clubs all around Canada. There was a place on Yonge Street called Starvin' Marvin's, which was old school burlesque.
Right.
And there was about 3 or 4 comics that would always work at Starvin' Marvin's, and they would go on between the dancers, and that was an actual strip show with tassels and routines and all that stuff. You talk about a bygone era. And Gary was one of those guys that would go on between and just do jokes or do whatever. And when the comedy club started up, there was Gary David, Harry Russell, Rummy Bishop, and Frenchie McFarlane.
Frenchie, yes.
Yeah, these guys would work these kind of places. And Gary was the only guy that could actually make the transition from the comedy club, from the burlesque shows to the comedy clubs, and he had the perfect timing of bits, of everything else, and jokes. Like He told some of the best jokes, and he told my favorite joke he ever told was about the guy walking along the beach and he kicks over a brass bottle and the genie appears.
Right.
And the genie says, "You have 3 wishes, but remember, whatever you wish for, your wife gets double." And he goes, "What's your first wish?" And the genie goes, and then the guy goes, he goes, well, I want $1 billion. I don't never want to worry about money again. I want $1 billion. He goes, you've got it. Your wife's got $2 billion. He goes, what's your second wish? He goes, I want the biggest house in the world, big mansion, swimming pool, a yacht, tennis courts. He goes, you've got it. Your wife's got two. He goes, what's your third wish? And he picks up the stick and he goes, I want you to take this stick and beat me half to death.
Oh, I love it. Oh, that's
that was
great.
my favorite joke.
Oh, man. All right. Well, listen, I want to thank you for being on the show, Mark. You're a wonderful guest.
Well, thanks. Is it actually WrestleMania today, Vito, or is it in a couple of weeks?
Oh, it was. I was watching the old. This is like at least 2 weeks old. I was just checking out old. I do that. I you know who got me into it? It was an old comic, and he got me into what he would do is down in the States, he would put in old VHS tapes of old AWA wrestling promos.
Yeah.
And I would go, what is this guy doing? And he would just sit there and go, well, look how great this promo is. They've only got 4 minutes. They got 4 minutes to tell, there's no cuts, there's no nothing. Look at how these guys are what they're doing. And all I would do is just sit there and watch these old wrestling tapes with them of guys that used to wrestle in the early 70s and it was watching these promos where he goes, look at this guy. He'd come out and he'd have like a shirt, and it was this horrible Hawaiian shirt. And he goes, this is a $10,000 shirt. No one touch it. Yeah. And it was just, you could tell he's going, he was told, this rookie, to sell that shirt is $10,000. So you better sell that shirt is $10,000 and get asses in the seats. And for me, I really enjoyed that. I always thought, he's right. So I got more and more into it, and I enjoy the old wrestling. But the kids are coming around to it, and I don't care. It's something for me, Mark. It was just an art form that hopefully does not die.
I hope not too, because I think they're and the greatest wrestling work of all time was Jerry Lawler, Andy Kaufman.
Oh God, talking about Letterman. You remember when he got slapped on Letterman?
Oh yeah, and they were the best of buds, and because Kaufman watched wrestling, and like a lot of comics, he just got it.
Do you know?
He said these people are geniuses, and he went as a fan, and he made friends with Lawler, and they said, well, we could really do something. And that opened the door for Cyndi Lauper and everything. Like Kaufman was really the gate to wrestling really coming to the next level.
And do you know how much? Like it was something like 80 or 90% of the women he wrestled, he ended up fucking.
Well, good for him.
Yeah, because he said he was a very shy guy, but he said if you would wrestle somebody, you would already, and it was the opposite sex, you would break down a barrier, the first barrier of talking to them, because you've already got your face between their legs. So it made him more comfortable to have a conversation. And after he'd wrestle with them, remember Kaufman used to have his buddy, the writer, who would
Zamuda.
Yes, that guy there. That guy there. He would totally get he would have these setups where he'd have a room just for Andy after to fuck the broad after, and it would be the wrestling chick. And while they were wrestling, he said he had to make sure the mic was not on because Andy would be sitting there going, oh, he'd be like, oh, this is fantastic.
Is that why you wanted a wrestling match when I got here today? Because I'm not into that.
Pardon?
Is that why you wanted to wrestle when I got here today?
Yeah, I wanted to wrestle you, of course.
Fuck that.
So yeah. Anyways, and then what happened was the guy, he was going out to remember the movie of Jim Carrey when he was playing that character.
Yeah, it was Man on the Moon. Yeah,
Man on the Moon. He had to play that character. So the Playboy Mansion invited him out. And he said, "Well, I'm gonna dress up like Tony, I'm gonna dress up like him." But keep it a secret, Hef. Keep it a secret. But Hef did not keep it a secret, and it came back to Jim Carrey. So Jim Carrey didn't go. He dressed up his buddy to go look like him. So this guy went there, and do you know the story?
I believe I have heard it. Yeah.
He went there, and he was getting blowjobs, and everybody thought it was Jim Carrey. And once the guy took off the makeup, Hugh Hefner was security. And
Awesome.
he said the poor women that gave him head were all like puking, and like it was just like, oh, they thought it was Jim Carrey they were sucking off, not some loser, you know. Ah, it's fantastic. Oh, what a wonderful way to end it. But
Yeah, there you go.
folks, we were talking to Mark Christian Walker. Again, he's played Just for Laughs, the Edinburgh Festival. You could catch him. Check him out on Facebook. I'll tell you right now, he's an absolute joy to watch, and you'll laugh your fucking ass off.
I hope so.
You do. You're so you never sell it. You got to sell it. But I don't have to sell. People, this is comedy gold. So, and one of the people that I enjoy watching, if you ever get the chance, watch Mark Walker. He'll blow your mind. It's been a joy to have him. Have a good show tonight, Mark. Kick ass.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll see how that one flies.
All right, and then, folks, this show is brought to you by Majestic Garage, and we are the Wrecking Crew. My name's Vito D'Amico.
My name's Mark Arts.
And it has been a joy. Please like us on Facebook. Let us know what we're doing. If you have any questions or answers, please tell us. Folks, be good.